億なんて払えない。勝手に生き返らせて借金払えなんて不条理よ。自分のこと何もわからないで私どうすればいいのよ。
借金のことはゆっくり考えましょう。僕が力になりますから。記憶だっていつか戻るかもしれませんよ。生きていれば素敵な出会いだってあるかもしれない。
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be video 2 in a series of 4 based on episode 15 of Cowboy Bebop. So we'll just jump right in.
3億なんて払えない。勝手に生き返らせて借金払えなんて不条理よ。3億なんて払えない。勝手に生き返らせて借金払えなんて不条理よ。
Okay, the bit we want to look at here is harae nante. So what Faye is saying is something like bringing me back to life, telling me that I have to pay all these debts, or telling me to pay all these debts. It's just not reasonable. I'm going to ignore the katteni here because it's virtually impossible to translate naturally, usefully into English. It means selfishly, without asking permission, but often you have to leave it out in an English translation. What I want to focus on here is the fact that there's no verb after the harae. The nante automatically converts whatever follows it, at least here, into a quote. This is not a particularly important point, but I take certain chunks of dialogue and I try to find something of interest in each of the sub-chunks within it. And I just thought it was worth pointing out here that this is a very idiomatically Japanese thing to say. You will have to end up being quite good at Japanese to even have a chance of speaking as naturally and idiomatically as Faye is speaking here. You know, some chunks of the language are relatively easy to grasp, relatively easy to use. Some of them are much harder, much more difficult to grasp and use. Understanding them is one thing, using them is an entirely separate problem, right?
自分のこと何もわからないで私どうすればいいのよ。自分のこと何もわからないで私どうすればいいのよ。
We're going to look at this ba-i structure here. 私はどうすればいいの? Or as Faye actually says, 私はどうすればいいのよ? This is not a complicated structure. You just use the ba form, then i, which means good or okay, right? The problem here is that it can take people quite a long time to grasp where to use this. It can take people quite a long time to actually get this into their heads and understand that it's an option in expressing certain concepts. So what Faye is saying here is, what should I do? In this very insistent way, right? 私はどうすればいいのよ? どうすればいいのよ? You know, what should I do? What is it that I should do? That's the concept. It's quite a simple concept. Literally, it's something like, it will be good if I do what, right? どうすれば, if I do what, will it be good? The problem here is that a lot of people are not going to have this bubble up into mind at the right time when they try and speak Japanese. They are probably going to think in terms of 方がいい, これを飲んだ方がいい. That's the first should type structure. In all likelihood, that'll bubble up into their brains, and it's not the right one to use here. So if Faye were to say, 私はどうした方がいいの? That would sound really weird. And I think any Japanese person hearing that would do a double take. You're not really supposed to use that structure about yourself, with yourself as the subject, but even if you leave that to one side, this would sound pretty weird, very weird in fact. 私はどうすればいいのよ? 私はどうしたらいいのよ? Those are both okay. To me, どうすればいいのよ sounds more natural. Sounds strange coming from me because as a man I wouldn't tend to say no yo. I would tend to say 私はどうすればいいんだよ or 俺はどうすればいいんだよ but that's an aside. There's another if form that you can use. Sometimes in this sort of context it's the to. It's not really an if form, it's a particle, but nonetheless. This really only works in statements. So you can say you should press this button or press this button. このボタンを押せばいいんだよ. That you can say, but どうするといいの? That you can't say. For some reason it doesn't work in questions. If you listen to a lot of Japanese, you'll notice, and you'll notice fairly quickly, that these structures are used very commonly. It is really important to understand that they exist, what they mean, and where you should use them. Without them, you're going to end up tying yourself up in knots trying to say things that are actually quite easy to say.
借金のことはゆっくり考えましょう。僕が力になりますから。借金のことはゆっくり考えましょう。僕が力になりますから。
So here we have Faye's boyfriend to be saying 僕が力になりますから which obviously means I will become power. Why is this idiot saying I will become power? What could that possibly mean? I will become strength? Well, of course he's not saying that at all. It's not obvious what that would mean in English. What he's saying is I'll help you. I will become your strength. I will become your power. Right? I will become your strength is a bit easier to understand, I would say. Languages are full of this kind of thing. Expressions that are somewhat opaque, but not genuinely, truly opaque. In the right sort of context, you'll be able to guess a lot of this stuff quite easily. But outside of any context, you will almost certainly not be able to guess it. This sort of thing is very common. So grappling with a huge amount of this sort of stuff is just part and parcel of learning a language. Any language. It doesn't have to be Japanese. Take an example from Spanish. This is an example from Spanish, which I speak to some extent. Tengo que ponerme al día. I have to put myself to the day. That means. Now, what on earth does that mean? Out of context, it's not that obvious. Maybe even in context, it won't be immediately obvious. What it means is that you have to catch up. You're doing something, studying something, and maybe you're ill for a couple of days and you've fallen behind. So now you have to put yourself to the day that everybody else is already at, so to speak. You have to catch up. There's loads of this kind of stuff in any language, including English. Now, some expressions are wildly idiomatic and opaque in their meanings. Some of them you just cannot guess at all. He went absolutely bananas. She's driving me up the wall. They're up in arms over it. He kicked the bucket a few years ago. There's no way you can guess what these mean. You'd have to hear these quite a few times in context to have any chance of figuring out what they meant. Of course, you could look them up, but that's something else.
記憶だっていつか戻るかもしれませんよ。生きていれば素敵な出会いだってあるかもしれない。記憶だっていつか戻るかもしれませんよ。生きていれば素敵な出会いだってあるかもしれない。
The last thing I want to look at in this video is datte. This is a very nice conversational word, really. It's not used very much in writing, in formal writing. It's a very nice conversational word that will make your Japanese sound much more natural, much more authentic if you can get the hang of it. To do that, you're going to have to figure out more or less what it means, and it's a little bit slippery. It's a particle. In effect, it's kind of similar to mo. It's a little bit similar to demo, but not exactly the same as either. In this little clip from the original anime, it comes up twice in quick succession. So we're going to look at both usages and see if we can figure out what's going on. Now, the first thing we hear is this, which you could translate as even your memories might come back eventually. That translation is far from perfect in my opinion. Sounds a bit unnatural. A better translation, in terms of capturing the original meaning, it's not going to sound very natural, but it would be more authentic, if you like, would be your memories might come back. In addition to all the other good things that might happen to you, in addition to all the other possibilities, hey, your memories might come back. So it's a little bit like mo, in the sense that it has that meaning of also, to, additionally, there are other things involved, but it's not exactly the same. And the second occurrence was this, which I would translate as meaning as long as you're alive, as long as you're still alive, you might even meet somebody nice. You never know, something like that could happen, who knows? So the word even works here in the translation, more or less. Here, the word datte is a way of speculating about what might happen. So a more direct translation would be something like, hey, you might have a nice encounter with somebody, or something like that, who knows? It's not that easy to explain, but hopefully this has helped at least a little bit. You'll hear it an awful lot in normal colloquial Japanese. Anyway, that's it for today. We ran through it all quite quickly there. Hope that was useful. That was part 2 in this 4-part series. I will see you again next time. That's it. Thanks very much. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.